The realm. Do you know what the realm is? It's the 1,000 blades of Aegon's enemies. A story we agree to tell each other over and over till we forget that it's a lie.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back from my Game of Thrones Season 8 video. Well, it's official, my friends. Game of Thrones has finally come to an end. I do want to say it has been one hell of a ride, and I want to start off by thanking all of you for supporting my channel. I hope that some of you were able to find some enjoyment from this episode because I know many of us have dedicated so much of our time to this story as well as the series. I know there are still a lot of things I wish they would have answered before it ended, but all I can do now is hope that the books give us some of those answers. Right now, I want to give some of my initial thoughts on the episode, then I will release another video later this week. Like most of the episodes this season, there were many things that I did like, and there were many things that I did not like. We begin right where the last episode ended. The attack on King's Landing was devastating. Daenerys Targaryen set fire to almost everything in sight. It's hard to imagine how anyone could live in this city after that battle. The streets are covered by the remains of mostly innocent civilians and Lannister soldiers. It basically looks like the inside of an incinerator. There are some skeletons still intact, but what's left is mostly ash from the thousands of fallen victims. This is obviously a very horrifying sight for Jon Snow, Davos, and Tyrion Lannister, especially when you consider that this was once the city that he called home. The crazy thing is, Cersei always wanted him dead, dating all the way back to when he was a child, but I still felt bad for him when he found his brother and sister's dead bodies below the Red Keep. As we all know, he sacrificed his own life in hopes of his brother surviving the battle for King's Landing. Regardless of what I thought about Cersei and Jaime's final scene together, it did suck to see Tyrion find them like that. One thing that really did surprise me this episode was how Jon Snow was acting near the beginning. One of the first things Jon tries to do is stop Grey Worm from executing the Lannister soldiers that have surrendered. It was obvious that Jon did not want to see anyone else have to die. Although they were Lannister soldiers, that did seem like something Jon would do. Shortly after this is when we see Daenerys Targaryen come outside and address her entire army. She made it very clear that this will not be the last battle. Now she wants to go everywhere, from Winterfell down to Dorne, from the Summer Isles to the Jade Sea, and everywhere in between. Dany made it known that she was only getting started. He later says to Tyrion, "I cannot justify what happened," but then he goes on to justify what happened. He says something along the lines of, Dany is not her father. Cersei made the choice to not open the gates and surrender right away. Dany saw Missandei get beheaded, and her other dragons shot out of the sky. Now, maybe I'm a dumbass, but that sounds like Jon was trying to justify what Dany did to King's Landing. Jon even said he didn't know what he would have done if he were the one on the back of the dragon. I could not believe that. Now, I know he loves Dany, but holy shit, Jon. You know damn well you would not have done what Dany did to all those innocent civilians. Then we finally get a Maester Aemon reference from the first season.
Love is the death of duty. If the day should ever come when your Lord Father was forced to choose between honor on the one hand and those he loves on the other, what would he do?
He would do whatever was right, no matter what.
Jon finally starts to come to the realization that maybe Tyrion is right. Jon knows what he should do, but he is blinded by his own love for Daenerys. Even Tyrion says the same thing about his brother. Jaime knew what he should have done, but he was also blinded by his own love for Cersei. It ended up costing him his own life, and it very well could have done the same thing to Jon Snow. How long would Daenerys have allowed Jon to live, knowing that he is the rightful heir to the Iron Throne? As long as Jon is alive, he would always be a threat to what Dany has always wanted for herself. It's not until Tyrion makes Jon realize that it won't only be his life that's in danger, but it will also be his sister's lives as well. We saw Ned Stark in a very similar situation back in the first season. Ned Stark was ready to die, but only when Varys made him realize his daughter's lives were in danger did Ned decide what he should do to try to keep them safe. That's what ultimately led to Ned Stark saying that Joffrey was the rightful king of Westeros, and I believe it's what ultimately led to Jon Snow realizing Dany had to die before she killed anyone else. This leads us right into the next scene where we see Daenerys Targaryen's vision from the House of the Undying become a reality. Only this time she actually does grab one of the swords on the Iron Throne. She never does sit down because Jon walks in shortly after. Once again, I thought this scene looked incredible. Then Jon Snow walks in and Dany continues to justify her actions as well as stand by her decision to keep fighting, even though she now has the Iron Throne. It's very obvious that Jon will have to kill Dany, otherwise everyone will be in danger. Considering what Dany has done, it did not really bother me that she died. Now that she had transformed into this new character, Jon had no other choice but to stop Dany as soon as he could. Dany ends up getting killed right in front of the Iron Throne like her father the Mad King did when Jaime stabbed him in the back. This almost immediately gets a response out of Drogon because him and Dany have a connection to one another that runs deeper than most of us could understand. Even after death, Dany and Drogon have a bond that could not be broken. Instead of burning Jon alive, Drogon instead turns his attention to the Iron Throne, arguably the main thing responsible for driving Daenerys Targaryen mad. I'm not exactly sure how Drogon would know this, but I did enjoy getting to see the Iron Throne melted down. Now I know Jon does have some Targaryen blood, but I was honestly expecting Drogon to burn Jon alive. In my opinion, I think that's what Drogon would have actually done, if they weren't trying to keep Jon alive for another reason. And even if it wasn't Drogon that killed Jon Snow, I would like to think that Grey Worm would have had him executed immediately. They still had King's Landing under their control, and considering Grey Worm was executing Lannister soldiers that already surrendered, I don't see why they would have let Jon Snow live right after he killed Dany. That did not make any sense to me. So then Drogon grabs Dany's body and he leaves the Red Keep. My guess is he has taken her back east. Now although Dany was born on Dragonstone, Westeros has never really felt like her home. No one was accepting her, and even as Dany said, no one here was loving her either. The last time we saw Drogon leave like this is when Jorah and Tyrion saw him flying over Valyria. This is the ancestral home of House Targaryen, and I would like to think this is where Drogon and Dany are heading next. I know some fans were already asking if Drogon will find Kinvara to bring Dany back to life, but I honestly doubt it. I do think that Dany was always meant to die in the end. I think this will also happen in the books, but of course it will not be as rushed as it was in the show. Alright, now this next scene happens several weeks later. All the High Lords and Ladies are now in King's Landing. I have to be honest, I did not like this scene for several reasons. So, Grey Worm and Tyrion come outside to meet everyone, and we finally see the man from Dorne, but we also see Edmure and Robin Arryn again. The last time we heard of Edmure was when Walder Frey said he had him locked back up in the cells.
Edmure's back in the cell. Can't go killing my son by law, wouldn't be right. Give the family a bad name.
We never saw anyone let him out. Even after Arya went there and killed almost everyone, we never saw her let Edmure out either. He was locked up down there for over half of the show, yet he somehow looks like nothing ever happened. I want to know why he wasn't there during the Battle of Winterfell. If he was free and he had Riverrun, there is no reason why he should not have been fighting during that battle. He looks healthy enough to fight to me. Robin Arryn wasn't there either, but we all know that he cannot fight. But he did send his army to help Winterfell fight the dead. Anyways, for some reason Tyrion is the one calling all the shots at the meeting, even though he is standing there in chains. By this time, they have to know that he let Jaime go free so he could help Cersei get out of the city before they died. Why would any of them want to listen to anything he has to say? Most of the lords and ladies that are there already had more than enough reasons to not like any of the Lannisters. I thought it was a little ridiculous that he was standing here in chains telling everyone what they should do. Anyway, so they all decide that Bran the Broken would be a good option for king. Bran the Broken is actually a reference from the books. This is something that he thinks about to himself. He thinks, is this what I am now? Bran the Broken? I don't want to be broken. I want to be a knight. In that scene, Bran even indicates that the whole reason why he even came down to King's Landing was because he knew this would happen. So it does look like Bran has the ability to see the future, which is something I have talked about in other videos. At first, he was only getting glimpses of the future, but now that he has had time to analyze all the visions, he now knows what will happen before it happens. Unfortunately, this is the last episode, so we will never see what this leads to next, but I do wonder if the Children of the Forest are still behind the scenes trying to orchestrate all of the events. I made a video about this over a year ago, and I will leave that link down below. I would recommend checking out that video because I think most of what I said is very relevant now that Bran is the new king of Westeros. Even in the books, it is said that Greenseers may be able to see far into the future. So you may be wondering, if Bran knew that Dany would kill everyone in King's Landing, why didn't he have someone stop her before she did that? Well, the only thing I can really say is it's most likely because if he tried to change any of the events, it could have made things even worse than they already were. Now, assuming Bran wants what's good for the realm, I'm sure he had his reasons for letting things happen the way that they were meant to. Now, if Bran does not have good intentions, well, I would only look to what the Children of the Forest were wanting ever since the first Long Night started. If you're interested in that, then like I said, check out my other video that's down below. We then see our first look at Bran Stark's new small council in King's Landing. Sam is the new Maester, Brienne is the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, and not only was Podrick knighted, but he's also on the Kingsguard as well. For some crazy reason, Bran is allowing Bronn on the small council, which doesn't make any sense to me. He did end up getting Highgarden, so I was definitely wrong about that prediction. I was right about Podrick getting knighted, and Brienne getting back on the Kingsguard, although I thought she would do it for Sansa and not Bran. I'm guessing that Sir Davos is the master of ships. I'm not really sure if they mentioned it or not, but I guess that makes sense. Most of this scene felt like fan service to me. Sam then brings in a book called A Song of Ice and Fire, Bronn starts to make jokes about brothels, Tyrion even references the jackass and the honeycomb, and now Bran finally decides to see what one of the dragons are up to. They know that the fans wanted to know how Tyrion's joke ended. They know that the fans wanted to see Sam writing down the story of a Game of Thrones, so it felt like they just added all this stuff to one final scene to make some of us happy. It actually had the reverse effect on me. I did, however, love the scene where Brienne was writing down Jaime's deeds in the White Book. This is something I have wanted to see happen for a very long time. Although Jaime did Brienne dirty in the end, she still did right by him. That book has haunted Jaime for years, and Brienne knew that because she was there one of the times that Jaime said, there is still room left on his pages for good deeds.
Pardoned by Robert Baratheon, thereafter known as the Kingslayer.
It's the duty of the Lord Commander to fill those pages. And there's still room left on mine.
Jaime did not want to die as the man only known for killing his king, so I did like that Brienne did that for Jaime. That was a nice way to end their stories. So then we find out that Grey Worm does not kill Jon Snow, but instead he is allowing him to live out the rest of his life at Castle Black. Grey Worm decides to take the Unsullied back to where him and Missandei were talking about going right before the Battle of Winterfell. Unfortunately, Missandei later died, but Grey Worm still wants to go. He might even be taking Missandei's body back there with him. It's kinda hard to say because they never mentioned it, but that's what I would like to think. Grey Worm seems to have been waiting to see if Jon was actually leaving for Castle Black. What I don't understand is, why did Jon still go even after Grey Worm and the Unsullied left King's Landing? You would think that as soon as they set sail, Bran would be like, alright Jon, now that he's gone and we don't have to worry about a battle breaking out, you don't actually have to go to Castle Black. You can go ahead and do whatever you want. But then again, we all know Jon. Even if Bran did say that, Jon would most likely still go live out the rest of his life at Castle Black. The rest of the Starks essentially got what they wanted. Arya decides to go west of Westeros, which is something she has dreamed about for quite some time.
Essos is east, and Westeros is west. But what's west of Westeros?
I don't know.
Nobody does. It's where all the maps stop.
The edge of the world, maybe.
I'd like to see that.
The North becomes independent again, and they have Sansa as their queen. They have laid the tracks for Sansa becoming the queen ever since the first season of the show.
You'd have to leave me. And so would you.
You left your home to come here, and I'd be queen someday.
And you will be queen over all of them.
I'll be a queen just like you, I promise. I won't hatch anything.
Even though it is kinda sad to see Jon have to go back to Castle Black, it does sorta make sense for his character. I really don't have any issues with how their stories ended. The only one that really seemed out of nowhere for me is how Bran Stark became the new king. It's not that I don't think it can happen in the books or anything like that, it just doesn't feel right in the show. I do wish they had given themselves some extra episodes to let all of that unfold. Bran becoming the new king felt like they just shoved it in at the very end. Although I don't really like it, I do like that the Starks seem to be fairly happy about how things ended. Sansa, Arya, and Bran all seem to have gotten what they wanted. House Stark has always been my favorite house, so I really can't be mad about that. Jon and Ghost are reunited, so that makes me very happy, and Jon even had a smile on his face when he left Castle Black. When Jon turned around right as the gate was closing down, it did feel like Jon was closing that chapter of his life. He is leaving behind the Seven Kingdoms in trade for his new life in the North. Jon never wanted the Iron Throne, and he never felt right at home in Winterfell either. Although Jon was sent to Castle Black, it does seem like he will get to live the rest of his life on his own terms. Something I mentioned in one of my last videos was the conversation Jon and Maester Aemon had back in the first season.
Who are you?
My father was Micah, the first of his name. My brother Aegon reigned after him when I had refused the throne, and he was followed by his son Aerys, whom they called the Mad King.
You're Aemon Targaryen.
Maester Aemon said how he gave up his own claim to the Iron Throne by becoming a Maester and joining the Night's Watch. And in the end, Jon essentially did the same thing. Even the Three-Eyed Raven, who was also made up of ice and fire, like Jon Snow, also joined the Night's Watch. So it's not a crazy thing to see a Targaryen live out the rest of their life at the Wall, or even beyond the Wall. I think Jon was always suited to live in the far north, so I am fine with his story ending right here. Like I said, Jon had a smile on his face at the end, so if he's happy, then I'm happy. Anyways, I wanted to give some of my initial thoughts on the episode. Let me know what you thought about the ending. Leave your comments down below. I want to thank everyone for watching the video, and I also want to thank everyone for supporting the channel. I hope you all have a great day. I will see you again very soon. Bye.